Lu Xing left the banquet hall and went straight to the VIP room that Harold had prepared. Sitting alone, he leaned back comfortably on the sofa, holding a glass of wine and smiling as he recalled the recent events. After sitting alone for a long time, the door finally creaked open from the outside. He glanced over and saw that it was Harold. The man respectfully clasped his hands together and curiously asked, "My lord, I heard that even the pearl of the Celestial Alliance has fallen for your charm." Lu Xing smirked. "So you've heard as well? If you didn't know, how could you call yourself the leader of Ring Seal?" Harold gave a wry smile. "This matter has probably already spread across the entire Holy Island by now." Lu Xing saw his expression but pretended not to notice, treating it as a trivial matter. Taking another sip of his wine, he smiled faintly. "Haha, have I caused trouble for you again?" Harold, unsure how to respond, swallowed nervously before finally speaking about the important matter. "My lord, as the president of the World Martial Arts Association and the leader of the Western Martial Alliance, there are quite a few 9th-level martial saints eager to build ties with the Cumberland family. You've drawn too much attention. I fear you'll become a target for everyone." Lu Xing glanced at him. Though Harold seemed to be offering advice, it was clear that he was under pressure from the martial saints and had come to relay their concerns. After all, Lu Xing's interactions with women at a banquet hardly warranted such fuss. Standing up, he placed the half-filled glass on the table and maintained his usual calm smile. Patting Harold lightly on the shoulder, he reassured him. "Don't worry, tomorrow, I will step forward and help you. We will reclaim our position." A sly smile appeared on Lu Xing's face. It seemed he had already planned everything. The next day, with his hands in his pockets, Lu Xing followed behind Harold. Leisurely, silently observing the surroundings. Noticing this, Harold began explaining. "This is the center of Holy Island. There are a total of 30 towering structures, each representing a martial saint. This time, 20 martial saints have arrived, 2 more than expected." Saying this, Harold pointed to the tall tower ahead and informed Lu Xing. "My lord, I'll head up first." Lu Xing merely flicked his hand in acknowledgement, then watched as Harold leaped to the top floor of the tower. Since he wasn't participating in the meeting, Lu Xing was about to leave when a chilling sensation suddenly surged through his body. It felt as if dozens of eyes, filled with murderous intent, were staring straight at him. For a moment, even he was taken aback. The moment Harold left, so many killing intents locked onto him at once. Interesting, if I were just Harold's lackey, I would have been dead by now. But for someone like Lu Xing, this was nothing. He only paused for a second before regaining his composure. Among those watching him, some were simply curious, especially the man standing next to Fiona. He turned to her and asked, "Is this the boy you fancy?" Fiona, standing behind her father, the leader of the World Martial Arts Association, Cumberland, immediately nodded. "Father, you were the one who told me to choose a life partner. I find him very suitable in every aspect." In reality, Fiona only cared about his looks, while her father only valued strength. "The kid's strength is decent," Cumberland remarked. "But he's Harold Ring Seal's nephew. Ring Seal has no reputation worth mentioning. And his strength is mediocre at best. Pick someone else. This one is no good. Choosing a life partner isn't just about appearances. No matter how you look at it, Harold's nephew is just as insignificant as Harold himself." Naturally, as the head of the World Martial Arts Association, Cumberland didn't think much of Lu Xing. His blunt dismissal left Fiona both angry and frustrated. She wanted to argue, but her father had already turned away, leaving behind only 2 words. "Be silent." His expression darkened, allowing no room for protest. "The conference is about to begin. If he can survive, I'll reconsider." Before long, the World Grandmaster Tournament was ready to commence, on a massive TV screen. The host excitedly explained the competition rules to the audience. At that moment, Lu Xing was just one of the many spectators eagerly waiting for the tournament to begin. Before arriving, Harold had already briefed him on the event. There were 2 phases in total. Phase 1. All Grandmasters had to collect subsequent crystals. The rules were similar to a military combat drill. Participants had to attack and plunder each other. In the end, they had to submit all their collected subsequent crystals, and their accumulated score would be based on the total amount handed in. Phase 2, Martial Combat, which was also point-based. The combined scores from both phases would determine the overall ranking and strength of the martial saints. Lu Xing wasn't particularly interested in the points. What mattered was how to provoke all 20 martial saints into attacking him, thus creating the pressure he desired, to temper both his spirit and martial body. Suddenly, he figured out the answer. A confident smile curled on his lips. In Phase 1, I'll seize every single subsequent crystal and refuse to submit them. That will surely make the martial saints atop the tower furious enough to come after my life, and then, I'll crush them one by one. Just imagining the scene thrilled him. With that thought, Lu Xing quietly entered the martial arena, ready to execute his plan. At the subsequent crystal collection zone, a crowd had already gathered in anticipation. Almost all the top fighters from various factions worldwide were present. Among them were two individuals observing Lu Xing. The girl with glasses remarked, "Look at that, the ring seal brat is bold. He's being targeted by so many people, yet he still dares to act alone. Should we call that bravery or stupidity? His displayed strength is too weak compared to expectations. It's no surprise people are mocking him." Unlike her companion merely glanced at Lu Xing and said, "Forget about him, focus on ourselves, stay close to me later, otherwise someone might steal your crystals." Meanwhile, in the Super Martial Dojo's camp, the team was already assembled in their uniforms. Leading the group was Dong Shong-yi. The main powerhouse, he had been assigned to lead a team and act accordingly to the dojo's strategy. Any developments were to be reported immediately. The military district team went into the competition with an extremely relaxed mindset. Winning the subsequent crystal this time would be great. But if not, they just wanted to have fun, so they discussed among themselves. "In my opinion, we should just find a spot, ambush others, and take what we need. Killing and looting will do the trick. Gathering resources painstakingly is nothing compared to robbing." The marshals laughed heartily. "Ho ho ho! At least let others gather resources first before robbing them. What is there to steal now? He he he. Fine then, we'll collect some first, then plunder everything from them later." They joked back and forth, not realizing how many subordinates were staring at them intently. Were these really military marshals? They seemed more like veteran military thugs. Seeing this, everyone just wanted to go home. Following these guys would only lead to looting. The situation in their eyes could only be summed up in words: a chaotic mess. Lu Xing acted alone. He somehow had a map showing the locations of the subsequent crystals. Not that he needed it. His spiritual power could scan the area and instantly locate the crystals. The plan was simple: collect some first, then start looting. Suddenly, he heard a noise behind him. Activating his spiritual power, he detected a tail following him but decided to ignore them for now. No time to play around. Later, he would scare them off all at once. With that thought, he leaped from the high mountain into the river below and disappeared. The pursuers, seeing this, immediately rushed out of their hiding spots. Each of them had an eerie, bizarre appearance. "Damn it! That brat is really slippery." He disappeared just like that. A man covered in talismans with his eyes tightly bandaged laughed coldly. "He can run for now, but he can't run forever. What kind of lowly creature dares to dream of the noble Lady Fiona? This time, we must ensure he doesn't leave here alive." Meanwhile, on the high tower of the Holy Heaven Island, someone asked, "Why didn't the Dark Star and Lei show up this time?" "Who knows? Maybe something came up. That just means it's more beneficial for Harold. Without the Dark Star and the Black Magic Society interfering, the Ring Seal faction can take a larger share." The speaker was a gray-haired man standing among his group. Each of them dressed and looked vastly different. After speaking, he glanced at Harold with an openly mocking look. "Just don't try to take too big a bite, or you'll choke, isn't that right, Harold?" Harold sneered inwardly. "Those guys didn't just not show up. They've already been fed to the fishes. Soon, it'll be your turn." He was secretly pleased. Just a little longer, and everything would be clear. Behind a fully veiled woman, Lin Wanwan addressed her as, "Mother, why is everyone targeting that martial saint?" she asked. "Because they all want to become the son-in-law of the Cumberland family," her mother replied. "But not just anyone is qualified, right? Lin Wanwan didn't understand. Wasn't having a martial saint as backing already enough? To her, someone like Harold was already incredibly formidable. Her mother simply explained. A normal martial saint would be sufficient, but Cumberland isn't just the president of the World Martial Arts Association. He's also ranked among the top 5 strongest individuals on this planet. Harold is merely a bottom-tier martial saint, let alone his grandson. How could they ever be considered a match? Lin Wanwan recalled the young man in question. Hearing her mother's words, she found it quite a pity. That guy was actually really handsome. I thought they looked great together. Then she suddenly grinned mischievously. Mother, what if it were for your sake? Would that be enough to qualify? What are you trying to say? You little brat? Her mother shot her a glare. Lin Wanwan giggled. I even encouraged senior brother Dong to woo Fiona before. Before she could finish, her mother knocked her on the head, leaving a lump. Don't ever have such thoughts again. Lin Wanwan clutched her head, looking pitiful, but deep down, she was already planning to try again next time. Meanwhile, after diving into the river, Lu Xing swam straight into the ocean, reaching a depth of 8,000 meters. His signal device glowed, indicating that he was getting closer to the subsequent crystal, according to research. Subsequent crystals were a form of energy condensation that leaked from the planet's core, similar to fresh blood oozing from a wound or sap from a tree. In a way, they were a renewable resource. Since this was the first collection event, there were plenty of them, but over time, they would diminish, which was why the event was held only once every 10 years. Lu Xing reached out, absorbing the subsequent crystals into his storage pouch. They emitted a soft purple glow and were as easy to collect as scooping fish into a net. His current goal was simple: gather as many as possible. After all, he had no intention of submitting them. The more wealth he hoarded, the more it would stir the greed of martial saints, and greed would drive motivation, and motivation would create the pressure he desired. He smirked. Don't disappoint me, martial saints. At this rate, was Lu Xing turning into a villain?